One of our collectively favorite relief valves in life, restaurants and bars, have been devastated in the COVID era. According to Data Central Research, over 10% of U.S. restaurants have closed permanently since the start of the pandemic in March of 2020. That means nearly 80,000 restaurants out of the nearly 780,000 in this country are gone since the start of COVID-19. Food trucks, a major player in Los Angeles where this podcast comes from, has been one of the hardest hit segments of the industry, with around 22.5% of them parking their trucks forever. Those that survive have worked hard to adapt, looking for new market niches, joining up with home delivery services, and where and when possible, creating new dining experiences to try and keep customers both safe and well fed. And fortunately, municipalities have helped them by freeing up more street space to increase their alfresco dining experiences. So, now that the vaccine is available to every adult in the US, we have a chance to begin to turn this trend around. California is optimistically planning to return to near normal business by the middle of June if we all do our part, continue to stay safe, and get our jabs. You know the light at the end of that tunnel? It's definitely getting brighter. Adam Bunnell is a serial entrepreneur who has been involved in multiple coffee startups. He currently is the owner and operator of Hustle and Dough, a small batch donut company that serves handmade donuts and Adam's own coffee roast from a food truck in all four corners of Los Angeles. My guest today is Adam Bunnell. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So in my bio, it says serial entrepreneur with multiple startups, but really just a hustler from day one. Since I was 15, 16 years old, I've had businesses or started different side companies or things like that. And on the side of just working or whatever. But currently I have a coffee and donut food truck called Hustle and Dough in Los Angeles. So I've
Nice.
thrown all my chips in the middle and we're making it a real go of it.
Okay. How has that been as a business before pandemic? Let's start with before pandemic and then we'll get to pandemic after. So how was that like? And what was it like starting up a food truck?
Starting up a food truck was pretty brutal, only because of the situation. I was actually going through a lot. I'd just gone through a nasty breakup with somebody I'd been with for 7 years. And I was working 2 jobs and I had all of a sudden this new business I had launched. And so I was paying insurances and rent on the business and paying all these taxes and with no experience. I had never worked on a food truck and I had really never had any experience running that kind of a business on my own. There's not really a school to teach you other than work for somebody else. And so they literally handed me the keys to the truck and said, "Hey, good luck," and not even how to hook up the generator or turn the lights on or anything. And so it was definitely a crash course in just how to run the business.
Did you buy somebody else's existing business and then take it over as your own, or did you create this one from scratch?
Created this one from scratch. I actually went to Texas. I bought a truck, and it was kind of the reason that the truck was the truck was never the intention of what I wanted to open. I really wanted to open. My background is in coffee, and so I really wanted to open a coffee shop. That's always been a goal or dream of mine ever since I was 12, 13 years old. And I came down to LA from the Bay Area, and that was my intention, was to open up a shop, work for a couple people, and kind of find the neighborhood I wanted to launch into and put all my money in and go. And quickly realized that LA is equally as expensive as the Bay Area. Opening up a retail space, and it was just not feasible at all. And so the food truck was kind of the route. It was a quicker way for me to do it, and it was something that I found a road to kind of finesse and get in under budget on. And it made it accessible to me.
So you're a coffee guy. Do you do your own blends for the truck as well?
We do. We roast our own coffee, and so that's kind of been the interesting part about it. Is I went in with every intention of this being a coffee truck only,
Yeah.
and quickly realized that one, there's not really a coffee culture in the United States that draws any kind of nostalgia. So donuts have been the draw. We've kind of pivoted from, I just thought we'd be a banging coffee truck with really good donuts. And my mom's been a baker for 20 years and has done it professionally for the last 10. And
Yeah.
so I've been in the kitchen most of my life and helping her and having her help me the last 5 or 10. And it kind of pivoted when I was getting more calls about the donuts than I was about the coffee, which absolutely broke my heart. But you quickly realize you go where the money is, you go with where the taste is. And I realized that there wasn't really a lot of donut. Obviously, there's only a couple of donut trucks, and there was
Yeah.
when I came down and we launched almost. I mean, that was 3.5 years ago. There wasn't quite the donut scene that there is now. There was Randy's Donuts, and then Sidecar was threatening to move here, and Blue Star had just opened up, but there wasn't like the huge competition that there is now.
How do you find locations to take the truck to normally?
It's a good question. So pre-pandemic, the business was a lot more predictable because, especially on the west side. So like, there's a lot of tech companies clearly in Culver City and Santa
Yeah.
Monica and things like that. So there's actually a pretty defined business model as far as where there's a lot of truck bookers. A lot of people don't know about, and so
Okay.
you could actually go through a booking agency and you could book yourself 6 days a week, twice a day if you really want to.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Yeah, for coffee, it's a little tougher. The numbers are getting more transparent as well. So, and it's still a community in that somebody will actually, if they have to get off a spot for the night, they'll actually tell you what they usually make at that spot. So it makes it
Okay.
worth it so they don't lose the account. But
Okay.
coffee was still a little difficult. And so I was chasing basically any kind of money I could. I was doing private events. I was switching up spots every day. And what I realized is that, especially with something like coffee and then donuts being kind of the added bonus, is you kind of need to build consistency in your schedule just so that people can build you into their routine.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you're dealing with people before they've had their coffee, so they're not awake, and so you just have to either get near their home or near their work, and that's when they kind of build you into, because people will take consistency over quality every day. That's why Starbucks is so successful. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of been that was really the hard lesson, and still a lesson I'm learning now is really creating consistency. You always at the end of the month are trying to chase that dollar to kind of make everything end on a positive note. And so
Yeah.
sacrificing that for consistency has been a struggle for the entire 4 years. And now with the pandemic happening, I mean, the first 3 months it was fear. I mean, nobody was leaving their home,
Yeah.
so we couldn't even get walk up business, and nobody was at an office. And so that was probably the most drastic change was that everybody's patterns changed. And so a lot of trucks closed. I was lucky enough to hustle and figure out how to keep mine just afloat. But you're seeing it with businesses too, and that they're changing a lot of their models. But now the truck is pretty consistent with where it's popping up,
Oh, that's
and
good. I'm
yeah.
pretty sure the business office, as we've known it, isn't coming back after this. But I wonder how many places are just going to, go down to sort of a WeWork kind of business model where they're renting office space on demand rather than, building out big complexes. I mean, big companies probably won't change that. The big companies, the ones that have a complex, aren't going to probably change that much. But yeah, I think the commercial real estate market's going to be an interesting thing to see when we get out of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, and with that too comes changes with just kind of not worker identity, but what your job actually
Yeah.
becomes. And it'll be, unfortunately, it'll be a lot of downsizing as well, because efficiency will become, or
Yeah. I think we've seen a lot of that already in traditional commercial kind of stuff, the downsizing of jobs. The industry you're in, unfortunately, is one of the ones that's hit the hardest by all of this, right? And
Mhm.
food services and that kind of thing. Um, for me, and I know nothing about this, so please understand that going in. It almost feels like having the truck is an advantage in the future, right? Because you've gotten through the year with a different kind of overhead, and you can move to wherever you need to be where your audience is. Is that true?
No, absolutely. No, you're 100% right. And it's interesting too. So you're seeing like different like over like we're down in LA, like over in Westwood has just been just decimated because a lot of and you're
The
seeing
college
different
has been closed, right?
college
So,
has been closed. Yeah, and
yeah,
and a lot of the corporate stuff is gone away too, right? Like a lot of
yeah,
the stuff that the university used to do with big dinners and big spending. And so it's
yeah,
interesting too. The food industry was really built for a huge disruption, anyways. Just in with the minimum wage going up and what roles were going to be and how you were going to be served was going to be incredibly different, as well as the cost of food was the it was all kind of coming to a head, and so this is kind of just kind of sped that up. And with the truck, it's given us a ton of flexibility. One, we're able to a lot of places are now so we do a lot of production catering kind of on the side of our normal spots, and
okay,
it kind of went from a treat to kind of a necessity in a lot of sense. Like craft services is
yeah,
somewhat of a liability as well, and it's sometimes easier just to bring out a truck than to actually go run and get food and
yeah,
logistically figure all that out. But yeah, you're right. Having the truck has been actually really great. It's shaped the neighborhoods have all changed a lot. It's been interesting when people have to stay put and not travel,
yeah,
or who's bailing on neighborhoods and different parts of the city to move to a Santa Barbara, or with people maybe commuting in 3 days a week, doing the
yeah,
extra hours rather than doing the hour commute. But we've kind of benefited from that a lot, just because a lot of places that would normally be our competition have gone away. So we're kind of a treat, right? Like if
yeah,
you're thinking of us as a donut thing, and so when we roll into a place, if we go into a brewery, for instance, or if we do a festival or something now, like a social
yeah,
distance one, we're kind of an anomaly because those normal businesses can't really survive, and so we kind of get treated as like a special thing, and so
yeah.
it's kind of pivoted us from a side thought to kind of a main joint, which is cool. Yeah.
I want to ask you this because you mentioned it, and I have not heard yet the business perspective on this. How would a $15 an hour minimum wage affect your business? Do you think?
No, it's a great question. It just changes because I think about this a lot because I would love to open up retail, and
Yeah,
I think about how I would build a team and a business around having to pay people slightly more
yeah,
per hour. And it kind of goes into just what your expectation is of each individual. And so you're going to run a leaner crew because obviously unless you're just banging out, $4,000 days and you can do whatever you want and printing
yeah,
money,
yeah,
which
yeah.
would be amazing. But if you're not doing that, which is the majority of businesses aren't doing that, you're going to find that and you're going to find that the way that you're served, a lot of it's going to be a lot of more communal things. So I think you're going to see a lot of clustering of businesses in higher
Okay,
end food courts, and then the individual businesses themselves. It'll be counter service and like one runner, or everything will be consolidated, right? Like all
okay,
the roles will kind of just be kind of melt into each other, and so you're going to have workers that aren't super specialized. You won't have just a cashier or just a line cook or anything like that. Everybody's expectations are going to be raised because now everybody kind of has to pitch in, 25%
right.
more. It's like when they say like you fire, the 10% of your staff, but like still all the work gets done because everybody else is
Yeah,
kind of scared.
yeah.
It's kind of that, but like you start with that as your model, and so you're just gonna see. I think you're gonna see the quality of food be exactly the same, if not higher, because um, it'll be it'll be kind of a redistribution of your funds, and so that might actually also help in buying better ingredients. But you're also seeing a lot of chefs who are incredible, who have really had higher end restaurants. You're talking like $15 to $18 plates, who are now getting into like the $12 to $15 joints, and they're
Yeah.
not doing passion projects, but they're doing things that are a little bit more fast casual, but they're doing it at an unbelievably high quality. And so I think overall you're just going to see a lot of just negative labor just done away with. There's not, I
Okay.
mean, and I was like, Amoeba just announced that they're going to open, or they're just opening back up their Hollywood
Yeah.
spot, and we had heard a lot about that they had actually closed because the rent, not only had the rent skyrocketed, but also because of minimum wage. They just, a business like that is going to have a huge difficulty with their payroll because you have just a lot of labor kind of sitting, and that's kind of the nature of that business. And so if you
Yeah.
think about that in the food industry as well, you're not going to have four servers on staff. You're not going to have two bartenders. It's going to be a lot more consolidated, I think.
Right. Yeah. I guess that makes sense. My dad was a waiter. So as I grew up, that's what he did for a living. And for a long time, he worked at the high end, like a high end seafood restaurant in Manhattan. Right.
Mm.
So, and these were the days when your tips were off the books, and you made all kinds of decent money because you'd have a $300 check, and people were generous if you were a good waiter. um, so I can see how, with all, I saw how the industry changed over the years for him. Now his tips had to be declared, and everything started to get different. And I've always found it bizarre that there's a lower minimum wage just in general in the restaurant industry because of tips, which I guess
Mhm.
you still have to declare on your taxes anyway. So, um, so I just wondered about, you don't think the money will just roll back onto us as the customers in price increases? And do you think that, I mean, what is the average minimum wage for a restaurant worker nowadays? How much is that $15 from where the average is?
If you're working in a restaurant, like in, I think, and I don't know if it's rolled out everywhere yet, but I know in Santa Monica specifically, they've already rolled out the $15,
Okay.
and that's just across the board. You just paid 15. That's where you start.
Okay.
Or if it's
Okay.
not 15, it's about to be 15. I think, it's a way bigger conversation, but I think you're going to see, specifically in dining out, you're going to see it's going to become a huge class separation. I think there's going to be
Oh,
a huge divide. It will be. I think the actual cost of the top end food will be put on the consumer and the customer, and
okay.
it's gonna I think change a lot of things in the next 5 years or so because we're just seeing the prices of everything rise and wages are
Yeah.
not for a lot of it, and so that's I think what I would say is going to happen probably more than anything else is who gets to go to a restaurant rather than how much is it.
Oh, okay. All right. Um, okay. So you're in the business. You found, I assume, places that are good to go and have an audience for your products, and you're doing okay. And then the pandemic lands. You talked about how a lot of the businesses dried up because people weren't going into their offices anymore.
Mhm.
We're just past a year of this state of the world. How have you been holding up?
It's been tough. It's been we're holding up good now. Like now we're kind of figuring we it took when the pandemic first hit, we Hustle and Dough specifically. I say we like there's a huge team. We Hustle and Dough lost a ton of private events, so that was what we were kind of building a lot of our business on was not
Okay.
public consumer facing and building a brand that way. We had really built out a really good network over the last 3 years of production catering. I had like 9 weddings on the books for last
Okay.
year, things like that. And so those all, the minute the pandemic hit, we kind of shuffled them all, and then to the end of the year of 2020, and then a lot of them just got outright canceled. And so
Right.
a lot of revenue that we were depending on in Q1 just kind of evaporated, which was a huge bummer. And then the summer was even tougher because we usually do a ton of festivals. We do a lot of events, a lot of birthdays. It's a lot of private events and things like that. And so yeah, the first 2 quarters was super brutal. It was People were scared. It was the money wasn't being spent at all. The delivery apps hadn't really taken off at that time either. But
Yeah.
there was just a lot of fear. We were still taking the truck out every day, trying to find whatever we could to make it happen. But it was like a tightness in the city. Like nobody, the roads were empty and
Yeah.
nobody was walking around. And so I ended up doing odd jobs. I ended up working for an old employer at the time as well. So for the first 6 months, like drove DoorDash, worked as a barista at old coffee shops, and then took the truck out as much as possible to try and hunt people down. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, everybody
People
was
weren't
so
gathering.
scared. Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, they
Yeah.
weren't doing anything, and they weren't
Yeah.
in the normal spots where we would usually do really well. Just even going to bars and breweries and just
Yeah.
nothing. So,
Yeah.
um, so as the first probably 6 months were really really hard. It was incredibly stressful, and also a lot of things kept changing. The CDC kept we all learned in real time what was happening, and policies would change. And
Yeah.
especially being a truck in Los Angeles, there were months where the roads got locked down, because they had, National Guard was down here, and they had put in the curfew and things, and so there was times.
This was during the civil unrest, like
Yeah,
last summer.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, we couldn't get on certain roads. So we couldn't even.
Yeah.
We had clients that had contracted us out, and I couldn't even get my truck to them
Yeah.
because, yeah, the National Guard wouldn't let us through. And so that was super crazy. And so it was definitely really difficult. And then emotionally, you're just a huge wreck just because you're
Yeah.
at home and living through it. And so
Yeah.
the uncertainty was really tough, and really we shut down for 2 weeks just because, especially at the beginning, because I didn't want to get anybody sick. That was
Yeah.
because that was the time when everybody was supposed to wash everything and do all
Yeah. Yeah. We
like
didn't know, right?
yeah
Do you have to spray down your bags of groceries when you get home? And
yeah
yeah, that first month was horrible.
yeah it was wild. And so that was definitely difficult for us. And then yeah, once we got through summer, things started to turn around a little bit. We ended up finding a neighborhood that we really liked. We were in Culver City a lot and in Mar Vista,
Okay.
and we had just kind of, and those were neighborhoods that I live in Mar Vista, so I love it, and so obviously I was comfortable there. But it was a neighborhood that kind of didn't have a lot. Same thing with parts of Culver City, because a lot of people there commute to different places.
Right.
Where we would usually go to the tech offices, those individuals were living in these neighborhoods. And so
Right.
yeah, we kind of found a really nice little niche of um, parking and serving them, because they would usually leave every day. There weren't like adequate businesses to really serve them what they were looking for. So we got kind
Right.
of lucky.
Well, that's good. How has all of this been on like family life?
Family's been tough. They are a huge. All my family's in the Bay Area, and so
Okay.
and they're a huge emotional support system for me. I talk to everybody. Everybody's on a group text, every day. So
Yeah.
we communicate a lot, very close. And so I would usually go up and visit 5 6 times a year, and
Yeah.
somebody would come down. And since the pandemic, I've gone up once, which has been super
Uh,
hard. And so
yeah.
everybody's just trying to be really careful, and
Yeah.
we have some family members who are a little compromised, so we're just trying to keep everybody safe,
Yeah.
and really just make sure everybody's healthy in that sense.
So here we are. It's now mid end of March, and we are vaccinating people like crazy. I got my first Moderna shot last week at Dodger Stadium this past weekend. Amazing to watch how they're doing it there. They're easily knocking out 5,000-6,000 vaccines a day
It's amazing.
based on the pace that they're doing it. There's a general feeling, in my opinion, that things are starting to get better. How are you feeling these days? What's the next 6 month like for you?
Oh, we're getting ready for summer. Summer, this is going to be like the most hopping summer of all time for just it's you can already we like we're already feeling it. And it's in budgets are loosening up. It's interesting. So a lot of people, you're not supposed to say this, but like a lot of people have a lot more money than they than they're leading on, because budgets for us are loosening up. Everybody's had to hang out at home for a whole year and not go to bars, go to
Yeah.
restaurants, do anything, no traveling. So, a lot of people are doing work in their homes, obviously, but just this summer, and you can just already feel it because it's coming early. A lot of the private events are already coming in.
Yeah.
A lot of the communication for festivals and different outdoor things are already starting, and the demand is already there for kind of a renaissance, almost like it's going to be
That's
just like
awesome.
this huge, just
Yeah.
crazy party. Everybody's been cooped up and just repressed, and it's going to go off. And so um yeah, we're preparing for that already, which is going to be really great. So we're excited for
That's very, very cool.
that. Yeah,
I mean, I feel it, right? I know there's this enormous amount of pent up demand out there
yeah,
for people to get back out in the streets, and seeing the numbers are, knock on wood, the numbers are staying low right
mhm,
now. We've lived through spikes in LA, but we're doing a good job of vaccinating people, and people seem to be taking it more seriously this time, you know?
absolutely.
I want to say. We'll see what happens after spring break is over, because that was the first spike last year after the initial hit.
Yeah,
Um, but hopefully, we're on the right track. And I've had the feeling for a while now that it was the summer would be critical, right?
mhm,
We'll get through the summer, and then the fall will feel very much like almost whatever the new normal is going to be,
yeah.
but not as restricted, locked in our houses all the time, kind of thing. So, yeah, it's starting to feel good again a little bit.
It feels almost detrimental to say that it feels positive. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right, especially with all the things that have gone on. But you can, it's been interesting to see that, especially in LA. Like a lot of my family is in very small towns of Sonoma County and Marin, and my sisters live in Oakland and San Francisco. But and so they don't deal with. I think going through the pandemic in LA specifically was such a unique experience because the city is not like New York in that there's so many people crammed into such a
yeah,
small spot, but
yeah,
that you like I see people every day, all the time, nonstop, and it's interesting to you almost have to cut out a lot of outside noise on criticism or anything like that because the
yeah,
city is not built for everybody to be home at the same time, and
yeah,
it's just not the space for it. And so
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting seeing how LA has also kind of finessed this whole pandemic and that it's gotten really creative and obviously it's been super horrible as well.
yeah,
It's this city's like vibrancy is still there and its creativity is still very
yeah,
very aware.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting.
I agree. I agree. Having spent a lot of years in the movie industry, seeing how they were able to pull it together and come up with a strategy that allowed them to get back on the set and shoot again,
Yeah, yeah,
and 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 they've been masterfully successful at it, right? You don't hear about. There were a couple of cases of films that were shooting in London that had problems with people getting sick, but you don't hear about any of the stuff that's going on in LA having any problems like that. And that's just because, we saw the problem, we came up with a solution for how to deal with it, and then we really took it seriously.
yeah.
um, I have one question that maybe you'll have a perspective on because of all the people that you deal with on a regular basis. How has been like mask adherence for people? Are you seeing people who are mostly okay with wearing masks? Are you seeing a lot of people fighting it in different? What's your experience been?
So it's funny. I've in dealing with like also the like we do a lot of catering with the movie industry. It's been interesting the wrinkle that having to do testing day of or day before has been
Yeah,
kind of thrown in. So we
yeah,
we get that a lot, and the mask has been really good. I've been really impressed. So I'm in. So when the numbers come in and when people complain about LA not wearing masks, it's interesting where I think it is because I'm in South Central every day. That's where my truck is, and I spend a lot of time there. And there is not one person without a mask down there. It is
yeah,
masked up, and it's a part of town where culture is everybody's out all the time. So it's always interesting seeing the perception of. And so I'm also very confused too when people have these horror stories, and it's usually of white people, breaking the rule, but it's like coming up and demanding things or like not having their mask on or being whatever. And I feel like now
yeah,
at this point now we've seen it enough where it's like those people who are being irritants about it and just not complying are kind of they've gotten tired of being fought with maybe and maybe they're all compliant, but it's
yeah,
you rarely see it now. And but at the beginning of the pandemic it was kind of egregious where you would see it like out in the valley and stuff like that, like the further away from the
yeah,
center of LA you got, like if you went down, we did a lot of events in the South Bay, like in Bellflower and stuff, and like you
Yeah.
would you would it would be like a little kid BMX thing, and like I was safe because I was in my truck and I'm away from everybody, but like all these kids are, riding these little BMX bikes and doing their whole thing, and then I would go all the way out to Northridge, or we'd be out in, like way out in NoHo or whatever, and like or Burbank, and you would see, and then you would see it in places like Brentwood was like 40% of people were not wearing masks at the beginning of this, like all the way
Yeah.
through the end of summer, and it was kind of crazy, and so it was interesting, like what it was almost like two different sections. It was people who just didn't believe in it, whatever, and then privilege, and so that
Yeah.
was kind of the interesting part. But for our check, like people have been amazing. Like everybody is incredibly respectful and wears a mask, and same thing with anybody that I bring on the truck who works with me is. I mean, we're a small operation, so it's usually just two of us, but fully masked up, and everybody just seems to have gotten it by now. We haven't had
Yeah.
any like nasty experiences with anybody,
That's good.
and we've been incredibly lucky for that. Yeah.
Talk about your coffee business because I'm fascinated by that. So, are you still in the roasting business yourself?
We don't roast for ourselves anymore. We have that kind of became a lot. To be very
Yeah.
honest, it became for how. So I thought it was going to be the main vein of our business. I thought that was going to
Right.
be the big leader, and so I had spent a lot of time putting into here's what the branding's going to be. Here's how we're going to attack wholesale and sell to other people. I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be just a huge contributor to the bottom line, and it just ends up that it wasn't. There's just a ton of amazing coffee in LA, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of relationships and be friends with a lot of people who roast amazing coffee and will
Okay.
sell it to me incredibly reasonably. And I have an amazing, just I can have anything from anywhere, and so
Uh,
and usually they live down the street, and I can just go pick it up from their
huh,
house. So
huh,
um,
that's cool.
so yeah, so that's kind of I went from wanting to really be a coffee company, having that as our identity, to realizing that I can, and to be very honest, like we will probably, if we ever get to the point where we can add that as another source of revenue, just to add on to the truck, we will definitely go back to it and roast when it becomes financially viable.
Cool.
But as far as what I've kind of realized with the truck is that the truck gets to be a catalyst for a lot of things. It gets to be it gets to be a source of comfort for people because I mean you're
Yeah.
seeing what's happening with pizza too, but our like everybody's just said forget it, we can eat carbs again. This is amazing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're eating bagels and everything, and so we've just become our donut sales are through the roof, and our coffee has been really minimized, but as everything grows, our coffee will grow in tandem
Sure.
with the donuts, and so it kind of lets that all kind of swell as one. So um, as we grow, the coffee business will grow, and then eventually we'll hit a breaking point where we can roast our own again and really label it as our own. But in the meantime, we just get to support some really amazing friends and roasters who are doing an incredible job. And so it's kind of like a cheat code, right? Like
Yeah.
you love something and you want to make it yourself and feel like you've handcrafted this product, but at the same time, you can just get an A+ from a friend of
Yeah.
yours, and I'm lucky enough and have had the experience that I can actually have somewhat of a say if I want in if I don't not if I don't trust them, but if I want something specific, I can nudge them in that specific direction. So it's kind of like being the boss with no responsibilities. It's kind of
Yeah.
amazing. You're just coming
Yeah.
in shooting
They'll
from
make
the
the
hip.
blend you ask, and they'll tweak the blend for you in a way, and that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and they let you in on all the fun stuff. So you get to go all the cuppings, and you get to when they're trying something new out, and then their people kind of learn about you, and so they want to hook you up or make your eyebrows go up a little bit,
Nice.
so
Nice.
it's a cool it's kind of like being a VIP at a club. It's kind of nice. So
Very nice. Okay. How many different varieties of donuts do you make in an average day?
we make so we do two different styles. Well, we do three different styles. We do a fritter, which is our most popular donut that we do.
Okay.
We do just kind of a raised yeast donut, which is like more like a sweet roll. So it's not super sweet, but it's like we've actually had a lot of other vendors use us as like the bun for something. So like
Oh, cool.
they make like a breakfast sandwich and they'll just flip it inside out and then grill it, which is kind of cool. Or we did
Okay.
a hot chicken pop up with somebody, and they used like our maple glazed donut, and then they would put the hot chicken in the middle and did a whole thing. So that was kind of neat. And
Sounds good.
yeah,
Sounds real good.
it definitely was a hit. And but we probably do of just the raised donut. We probably do 5 or 6 different flavors. Kind of depends what's going on. And then
Okay.
we'll do a slightly different style for when we fill it with stuff. So like if we're doing like some sort of a jam or jelly donut, or we were doing a peanut butter filled with like Muddy Buddies on top and salted caramel. And that was really good. So
Nice. Nice.
it'll be like a slightly spongier and a little bit easier to cook through. So
Okay.
yeah,
Is there a particular fan favorite that's like the go-to that your regulars come back for all the time?
it's funny. So we spent a lot of time on the main dough. I spent probably a little over a year working on different recipes. We went everything from mashed potatoes in the dough to like doing these super light fluffy boys like you get at like Winchell's and Yum Yum and Krispy Kreme. And it turned out that the fritter sells better than anything, and
Okay.
which is really frustrating because it's incredibly easy to make, and we came super late to the game on it. I kind of just started making the apple fritter because I was out of yeast, and I was going to an account, and I was like, "Holy smokes! I have to fill 15 more donuts to make this account work and get paid out." And I had baking powder and everything I needed to make, and I just had to grab some apples, and so I just went to the market down the street and grabbed the apples, and it because with normal donuts you roll them out, you let them rise, and then you fry them. So that usually takes about from start to finish usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours just to
Yeah.
get one donut. Getting one donut's the same as getting 100 donuts because you have to let them all rise. But with a fritter, you can just fire it out. So that was kind of the savior. And then we had such a positive reaction from it. I just started making them all the time, and then it kind of took about 6 months to dial that recipe in. We had a lot of different variations of it, but we
Yeah.
always work it out through the customers, and so they're really good about telling us what sucks and what doesn't. And so it kind of took a little bit of time, but that's I probably sell if I put out 2 dozen fritters, I sell 2 dozen fritters, and it's
Nice.
kind of amazing. Yeah, it was frustrating because we put all that time into the other dough, but who cares? We're selling fritters,
Yeah. Go where the audience is, right?
exactly. Yeah.
How how can people in LA find you?
Hustleanddough.com is our website, and then we also our Instagram is pretty popping. So hustle the letter N and then dough um,
Okay.
is our Instagram. So yeah, either
Okay.
one of those.
And that will also show where you're located at on any given day, so people can come find the truck.
Absolutely, the Instagram is probably the best spot for that. We usually post daily where we're going to be. We have our weekly schedule on there. We're getting some work done on our truck currently, so we're going to be off the road for
Okay.
about a week. But yeah, we usually have, and if thing that's why I always push people to the Instagram because things change pretty quickly for us, especially now we're getting like last Friday, for instance, at 11 o'clock at night, I got a phone call that another truck had canceled for an 11-year-old's birthday. And so we ended up in Anaheim in the morning rather than in Santa Monica. So I always push people to the Instagram because it'll give you real time on where we're actually going to be.
I will make sure all of it is listed in the show notes so anybody who's interested can find it. And I'm guessing that if you're a listener who's in a place like New York, you're just out of luck for now.
We're going to have merch soon so they can buy a t-shirt if they want.
Okay. There you go. All right. Adam, thanks for joining me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Jeff, it was my pleasure. I really appreciate it.